There is a silence beneath all sound, a stillness deeper than any peace you have ever known. It does not announce itself with thunder, nor arrive with fanfare. It is soft, like the hush before dawn, ancient, like the breath of the stars. And in that silence, if you are very still, very open, very surrendered, you will hear it, not with your ears, but with the soul behind your ribs. You have spoken to God, haven't you? In whispered prayers on tired nights, in desperate pleas when all else failed, in gratitude so full it broke you open. And perhaps you thought that was the end of the conversation. That prayer was the full extent of the dialogue. But there is more. There is another voice, one that does not come from you but moves through you. A voice not born of thought, but of knowing. It is what we call intuition. And intuition is not you talking to God. Intuition is God talking to you. It does not shout. It will never compete with the noise. It will not argue with your mind. It waits gently until you remember to be still enough to listen. This is the great reversal. We were taught to reach for answers outside of ourselves, to consult the world, to ask the experts. But the sacred truth, the liberating, terrifying, empowering truth, is that the guidance you seek is not elsewhere. It is already within, not because you are special, but because you are divine. You always have been. You only forgot. And so you pray. Beautiful. Prayer is the soul's exhale, the sacred yearning turned into words, the humble bow of a heart remembering its source. But prayer is only half of the miracle. The other half is listening. And listening requires surrender, not to a dogma, not to a belief system, but to the mysterious presence within you that always knows. The one who already sees the path even when your eyes are clouded by fear. The one who whispers, "This way," even when logic screams, "That way." The one who asks for your trust, not because it needs it, but because you do. You have called this presence many names: soul, higher self, spirit, but it is all one voice, all one current, all one divine intelligence expressing itself through your unique form. And when you stop demanding that life make sense on your terms, when you stop insisting that the mind alone should lead, that voice rises. It is not new. It did not arrive when you became spiritual. It did not show up after the healing began. It was there in childhood when you followed what felt good without explanation. It was there in moments of crisis when something told you to turn left instead of right. It was there in the stillness between heartbreaks, holding you together while you fell apart. This voice, this intuition, is not learned. It is remembered. And when you remember, you awaken. You awaken not into new information, but into the felt experience that you are not separate from the source, that you have never been, that every breath is divine, that every moment carries the guidance you seek if you are only willing to slow down enough to feel it. You were taught to pray up as if God were far above. But God is not far. God is nearer than your next breath, closer than your next thought, more intimate than your next heartbeat. When you pray, you are not speaking to something outside yourself. You are turning inward toward the infinite that lives and moves and has its being within you. And when you hear that whisper, the one that makes no sense to the mind but feels like truth in the bones you are being spoken to, that is God's reply. That is intuition, and it is holy. You were not sent here to navigate life with only your five senses. You were not born to depend solely on maps drawn by others. The divine, in its infinite love, placed within you a compass, a sacred, silent knowing that cannot be proven, only trusted. It is not loud, because truth does not shout. It is not dramatic, because love does not perform. But it is always there, constant, clear, a presence that guides not through fear, but through resonance. It doesn't explain, it confirms. It doesn't argue, it aligns. When you hear it, it feels like a breath you didn't know you were holding has finally been released. And yet, how often have you doubted it? How often have you silenced the whisper because it did not make sense? Because it contradicted what others expected? Because it didn't fit the narrative you were taught to follow? You chose logic over love, safety over surrender, approval over authenticity, and still the whisper remained, not to punish you, not to control you, but because it is your birthright, your inheritance. The still small voice of God, echoing through your being, waiting to be remembered. Intuition is not a superpower for the gifted few. It is the native language of your soul. It is not mystical. It is natural. Not magical. It is inevitable. Every creature in the forest follows it. Every wave in the ocean honors it. Every star obeys it. Only humans have forgotten, because only humans have been taught to fear the inner voice more than the outer noise. But the moment you return to that voice, truly return, something miraculous happens. The world no longer feels like a maze. Your choices no longer feel like burdens. Your path no longer feels like a mystery. Because you are no longer trying to figure it all out, you are allowing it to unfold from within. This is not passivity. This is power. This is not blindness. This is vision. The kind of vision that sees not with the eyes, but with the heart. The kind that recognizes truth without needing to prove it. The kind that does not require evidence, because it already knows. There is a kind of wisdom that cannot be learned, only received. A wisdom that flows in when the mind grows quiet and the heart becomes soft. That wisdom is the voice of God speaking through your intuition. And it does not come to control you, but to liberate you. It says you are not lost. You are being led. It says you are not broken. You are breaking open. It says you are not alone. I have always been here. The ego will argue. It will demand clarity. It will seek guarantees. But intuition offers none of that. Intuition offers only the next breath, the next step, the next nudge toward love. And that is enough. That is always enough. Because when you follow the whisper, you walk not by sight, but by faith, not faith in an idea, but faith in a presence that lives and breathes through you. You don't need to understand it. You need only to trust it. You don't need to explain it to others. You need only to honor it within yourself. And when you do, life begins to organize itself around your alignment. Not instantly, not always comfortably, but undeniably, doors open, people appear, events align, not because you manipulated them into place, but because you return to the current of life that was always flowing in your favor. Every time you honor your intuition, you deepen your conversation with God. Every time you listen to that still small voice, you affirm that you are not alone, that you are not abandoned, that you are not separate from the infinite. You are the infinite, expressed through form, guided from within, protected by a presence that knows the entire map even when you see only one step. Prayer is the sacred offering of your truth to the divine. Intuition is the divine's sacred reply. And it is time you listen. There is something sacred that begins to unfold when you stop needing signs and start trusting the stirrings. When you no longer wait for the world to confirm your path, but simply walk it because it feels like home. You see, intuition is not here to make sense, it is here to make you whole. It does not arrive to convince the mind. It arises to awaken the soul. It speaks in the language of resonance, not rationale. It moves in the direction of alignment, not approval. It is the voice of the infinite, reminding the finite self that it was never truly small. And yet we are taught to override this voice with noise, with data, with the opinions of those who do not live in our skin. We are told to mistrust the unseen, to bow only to what can be measured and proven. But what is proof to a soul that knows? What is evidence to a heart that remembers? The deepest truths of your life, the ones that shaped you, healed you, transformed you, they did not come with blueprints. They came as sudden clarity, as quiet recognition, as the undeniable knowing that something sacred was moving through you. You are not meant to navigate this life by logic alone. You are meant to feel your way through like a blindfolded child walking a path guided only by light within. That inner light is not fragile, it is eternal. And every time you honor it, your path becomes less about striving and more about surrendering, less about controlling outcomes and more about aligning with origins. Intuition is not another tool in your toolbox. It is the thread that connects you to the whole. It is how the divine breathes into your daily life. Not in grand visions or angelic choirs, but in simple nudges, a sudden unease that pulls you back from danger, a gentle push to speak up when silence feels safer, a quiet peace that settles over you when you finally say yes to what your soul has been whispering all along. You may call it guidance, but it is more than that. It is communion. It is your part of the conversation with the infinite. You are not just receiving wisdom, you are remembering it. You are not just being led, you are being reunited with your own divine rhythm. and that rhythm does not falter. It does not lie. It does not change with the weather of your emotions. It remains steady, even as the waves rise. When you live by intuition, your life becomes less about seeking answers and more about trusting the questions. You stop demanding certainty and begin cultivating faith, not blind faith, but sacred recognition. Recognition that life is not random, that your presence here is not accidental, and that the compass within you is not faulty. It is flawless. It is ancient. It is the echo of the source within your own soul. And when you move from that space, when your steps are not dictated by fear but directed by alignment, you begin to understand that success is not a destination. It is a frequency. Peace is not the reward at the end of obedience. It is the companion of authenticity. Joy is not reserved for those who achieve enough. It is the inheritance of those who trust enough. You will never find your path in another's certainty. You will find it in your own sacred uncertainty, where the mind lets go and the heart takes the lead. Where you are no longer navigating life like a battlefield, but dancing through it like a sacred ceremony. Where each moment becomes less about proving and more about presence. For this is what it means to live from within. Not to reject the world, but to no longer be governed by it. Not to abandon reason, but to let reason follow intuition, not lead it. You are not here to be guided solely by what others have seen. You are here to awaken to what only you can feel. And what you feel, what rises from the silence of your own soul, that is where God speaks. There comes a point in every awakened life when the external noise becomes unbearable, not because it grows louder, but because the soul grows quieter. It is not that the world becomes more chaotic, but that your inner ear becomes more attuned to harmony. And the disharmony of outer demands, the deadlines, the expectations, the identities you've outgrown begin to fall out of tune with your essence. This dissonance is not a problem to fix. It is a signal, a sacred calling. It is your intuition alerting you. The time has come to return home. Not to the home built of bricks and borders, but to the home behind your ribs, the sanctuary that cannot be seen but can be felt, the temple not made with hands but with presence. Your intuition is the voice that lives in that home. It is not concerned with how things appear. It is only concerned with whether you are aligned. And alignment is not performance, it is integrity. It is not being right, it is being real. And so you begin to notice things you once ignored. The fatigue that isn't just tiredness, it's your soul saying no. The longing that isn't just dissatisfaction, it's your soul pulling you toward truth. The discomfort that doesn't mean you're broken, it means you're expanding. Your intuition speaks not in commands, but in currents. It does not demand, it draws. It does not scold, it nudges. And the more you honor it, the more the world around you begins to shift. What once felt essential validation, applause, conformity begins to feel empty. What once seemed risky slowness, solitude, honesty begins to feel like salvation. You are not becoming someone else. You are shedding the noise that kept you from yourself. This is not reinvention, it is remembrance. And what you remember is that you were never meant to live by default. You were meant to live by design, not someone else's design, divine design, sacred design, your soul's design. When you start following this inner voice, life does not necessarily get easier, but it does become lighter. There may still be grief, but it will no longer drown you. There may still be uncertainty, but it will no longer paralyze you. Because something within you knows you are no longer alone on this path. You never were. You are no longer forcing your way through. You are being led by a presence that does not sleep, led by a voice that never forgets who you are, even when you do. And this voice, your intuition, does not promise comfort. It promises truth. It will not protect you from every wound, but it will ensure that every wound becomes sacred. That every experience, whether celebrated or mourned, will become part of the tapestry being woven through you. You will look back on decisions that made no sense to your mind, yet felt undeniably right. You will look back on the moments you said yes to something invisible, only to realize later that it was your soul saying yes to itself. That is what intuition does. It bypasses the intellect, bypasses the fear, and speaks directly to the truth of who you are becoming. It does not operate in timelines, it does not check the clocks. It speaks from eternity and guides you moment by moment into more of yourself. This is why we must learn to listen again, not casually but reverently, as if every whisper were a scripture, as if every nudge were a verse in the gospel of your own becoming. Because it is. Because the sacred does not only live in holy books, it lives in your breath. It lives in the way your heart speeds up when truth draws near. It lives in the goosebumps that rise when your spirit hears something it recognizes. That recognition is intuition. And that intuition is God reminding you, I am here, not up there. In here, not someday. Now. And the now is holy. The now is where the conversation unfolds. The now is where heaven is not a destination, but a vibration, a frequency you tune into when you quiet the noise and open your heart to what's already been whispering all along. There comes a season in your awakening where you begin to trust without proof, to move without permission, to speak without rehearsing. Not because you become reckless, but because you become rooted. The roots of your being no longer cling to the soil of public opinion or borrowed beliefs. They drink instead from the subterranean river of divine knowing. And when that river begins to flow freely through you, intuition no longer feels like guidance, it feels like breath. Natural, necessary, effortless. It is not a separate voice you hear, it is your own voice, uncluttered by fear. It is not a foreign signal you interpret, it is your natural frequency, finally uninterrupted. You do not need to decode it. You only need to stop distorting it. The distortions come from the noise, the conditioning that told you to mistrust yourself, to look outward for confirmation, to abandon your truth in exchange for temporary safety. But what is safety if it costs your soul? What is approval if it requires silence where your voice was meant to rise? And so intuition begins, not as thunder, but as tremor, a small vibration in your chest, a subtle warmth in your belly, a shift in energy that says this is the way, not with certainty, but with clarity, not with maps, but with magnetism. You feel drawn, pulled, guided, not by logic's hand, but by love's invitation. This is the sacred geometry of your spirit at work. An invisible architecture, building a life from within, shaping choices not from scarcity, but from wholeness. You begin to live from alignment rather than reaction. And in that space, miracles become normal. Not the grand gestures that defy physics, but the quiet recalibrations that defy fear. A person you needed appears. A door gently closes that was never yours. A long-awaited peace begins to rest in your body. Not because everything is resolved, but because you are no longer resisting what is. You are in union with a current, and in this current, prayer and intuition merge. Prayer is no longer a performance, it is a posture, a sacred yielding. You no longer ask to be saved, you ask to be shown. You no longer beg for a plan, you open to the path that is already forming beneath your feet. You begin to understand that you were never meant to manipulate your life into place. You were meant to tune into its unfolding. This unfolding is not passive, it is profoundly alive. You still act, you still choose, you still create. But no longer from panic, no longer from scarcity. Your movements become extensions of your essence, not reactions to your fear. You no longer strive to be seen, you radiate from having seen yourself. You no longer push to be heard, you speak from the echo of something eternal that already said, you are. And in that echo, you remember, you are not here to be anything other than what you already are. You are not a project to be perfected, you are a presence to be embodied. The more you shed the need to become, the more you return to being. And being is the most revolutionary act in a world addicted to becoming. Being is not stillness for stillness' sake. It is stillness that reveals motion born of truth. This is the rhythm intuition leads you into. Not a sprint, not a retreat, but a dance. Sometimes bold, sometimes still, but always synchronized with the divine music that only you can hear. And if others do not hear it, bless them. They are dancing to their own sacred song. You do not need agreement to walk your path. You need integrity. And intuition is the compass that ensures that integrity remains intact. When you live like this, you do not become immune to pain, but you become fluent in its messages. You do not avoid the dark, but you no longer mistake it for the absence of light. You see that the night too is sacred, that the unknown is not an enemy, but a womb. That intuition often sounds like silence, because silence is where the deepest truths emerge. You begin to reframe uncertainty not as a void, but as a sanctuary. Not as failure, but as freedom. You stop needing every step to be lit because you trust the source of the light within you. And you stop looking at others to tell you who you are because you've heard the whisper for yourself. You've felt the sacred pull. You've touched the river of truth that flows beneath all things. And once you touch it, you can never go back. So you bless the questions, you honor the pauses, you walk into the unknown, not with fear, but with reverence. And as you do, you no longer just believe in God, you become aware that you are being breathed by God, that each moment of alignment is a holy dialogue, that each intuitive nudge is not random, it is revelation. The divine does not speak in lightning bolts, it speaks in you. You are the continuation of the prayer. You are the unfolding answer. Because what begins as a whisper becomes a way of life. At first, it is delicate, a flicker in the wind, a barely noticeable pull in the chest, a subtle vibration that trembles just beneath thought. But the more you follow it, the more you find that it never truly leaves. It grows not louder, but truer, not more forceful, but more constant. And you, the once hesitant listener, become its sacred companion. You become the tuning fork for divine intelligence. You stop searching for miracles because your life becomes one, not because everything is perfect, but because everything is aligned. There is no separation between the spiritual and the ordinary. That was a myth you were sold by a world that did not yet know its own holiness. But the soul remembers. It always remembers. That sacred stillness is not reserved for mountaintops or monasteries. It lives in the grocery line, in the way you speak to the stranger, in the pause before you answer your child. Intuition begins to shape your presence, and your presence becomes your offering. You realize that the divine does not want performance. It wants participation. It wants you as you are, where you are, attuned and available. And this is when life starts to rearrange itself, not because you forced it, but because you finally aligned with what was true all along. Relationships shift. Some fall away with grace, some with thunder, but always something clearer rises in their place. Work begins to feel different. No longer just a task, but an extension of your frequency. Your inner life becomes your compass, and your outer world becomes a mirror. You stop managing appearances and start stewarding energy. You begin to care less about how things look and more about how they feel. This is the beginning of real power. You see, the world cannot give you what it did not place in you. And what is in you, this sacred intuition, this divine inner knowing, was not planted by man. It was placed there by the same intelligence that paints sunsets without ever asking for applause. And like the sunset, your job is not to be understood. It is to be true. You are not here to fit in, but to radiate. And that radiance comes not from effort, but from trust. Not from striving, but from surrender. Intuition is the art of surrendering to the frequency of your own truth, over and over again, until your whole life hums with the resonance of the real. There is an unmistakable peace that comes when you begin to trust the voice within more than the voices without. Not a peace that ignores pain, but one that makes space for it. Not a peace that bypasses life, but one that breathes through it. This peace does not mean the absence of challenge. It means the presence of alignment. And alignment is everything. When you are aligned, your steps are guided, your speech is purposeful, your silence is sacred. You no longer need to rush into the next moment to feel whole, because you have returned to the only place where life truly happens. Now, and here in this sacred now, you begin to hear God not just in intuition, but in everything. In the way the trees lean into the wind, in the way grief opens you without warning, in the way laughter breaks through your weariness like sunlight through storm clouds. You realize that the voice of the divine is not distant. It is present in the marrow of each moment, if only you dare to be present with it. And so prayer changes too. It is no longer just asking, it becomes listening. No longer just speaking, it becomes surrendering. You stop praying for outcomes and start praying for alignment. You stop asking for life to bend to your will and start opening to the will that already knows your path more intimately than you ever could. Prayer becomes less of a request and more of a relationship. And in that relationship, intuition becomes your sacred language. The subtle way the infinite speaks through the finite, leading you not toward perfection, but toward presence. And in presence, you remember, you were never chasing clarity, you were chasing connection. Not connection to a plan, but to a presence. Not to answers, but to awareness. And now here you are, not at the end, but in the center. Not finished, but finally beginning, not beginning, a new life, but beginning to live the one that has always been yours. You were never meant to navigate alone, because prayer is you talking to God, and intuition is God talking to you. There will come a time, and perhaps that time is now, when you will stop asking if you are on the right path and begin to trust that the path is made right by your presence upon it. You will no longer wonder if you've missed your purpose, for you will have realized your purpose is to be aligned with your inner truth, and that truth is forever unfolding. You are not a traveler chasing destinations. You are the awakening of the road itself. Each step you take in alignment with your intuition is a step into sacred ground, and sacred ground is not somewhere you arrive at, it's what you create with your presence. And so the old way of living begins to fall away, not with a crash, but with a sigh. The self that had to prove, to chase, to earn, to be seen, it begins to dissolve like mist in the morning Sunday. What remains is not a smaller you, but the real you. The you that does not need to be explained because it is felt. The you that does not need to be defended because it is truth. The you that does not shout because it radiates. This self does not hunger because it remembers, I am already what I seek. I do not need to find the divine. I am a living expression of it. In this remembrance, life softens, not because challenges disappear, but because you stop struggling against them. You begin to see even difficulty as divine orchestration, not punishment, but preparation. Not chaos, but calling. And your intuition continues to guide you, not as a roadmap, but as a rhythm. Not as a loud announcement, but as a gentle direction, felt only when you are still enough to receive. And what does it mean to be still? It means to stop fleeing, to stop rushing toward futures that promise what your own soul already holds, to stop escaping the present moment as though your divinity were waiting somewhere else. Stillness is not the absence of motion, it is the fullness of presence. And presence is where the voice of God is clearest, because God does not need to shout when you are already listening. You see, the divine has been speaking to you since before you knew what listening was. In the ache that told you you were meant for more. In the yearning that whispered there was something sacred in your sorrow. In the unexplainable pull toward people, places, paths that seemed irrational but felt like home. That was God. Not testing you, not confusing you. Guiding you through intuition back to yourself. And now, you are learning to trust that voice more than the noise. You are learning to follow what you feel, even when it goes against what you've been taught. You are learning to answer to your soul, not to your fears. And as you do, you become more than a seeker. You become an instrument, a vessel, a living prayer. Because prayer, beloved, is not just words. It is your breath. It is your stillness. It is your choices made in truth. And intuition is not a luxury. It is your native language. It is the divine loving you in real time, speaking through the whisper behind your thoughts, the knowing behind your mind. You are never without guidance. You are never without connection. You only believed you were. Now, you remember, and what you remember is peace. Not a peace dependent on circumstance, but one born of surrender. You stop needing guarantees and begin walking in trust. You stop needing the world to validate your direction, because your soul already has. You stop seeking the light and finally allow yourself to be it. The shift is not something you force, it is something you allow. The real you is not found, it is revealed. And it was never far, it was always here. Closer than breath, quieter than thought, more faithful than the sunrise. So now you bow not in defeat, but in devotion. You place your hand on your heart and know, I am not waiting for guidance. I am living it. I am not separate from God. I am the space through which God expresses. I am not becoming. I am remembering. And so, let your life become the prayer. Let your breath become the altar. Let your intuition become the voice of the divine rising from within. Let your stillness be the sanctuary. And let your presence be the answer to the prayer you once whispered into the sky. Because prayer is you talking to God. And intuition is God talking to you. And now, you are listening. There is a quiet knowing that lives at the center of your being. A flame that has never flickered, never dimmed, not even in your darkest nights. That flame is the presence of God. Not the God of thunder and fear, not the God of judgment and distance, but the God of silence, of breath, of this moment, the God that does not reside in the heavens alone, but whispers in the stillness of your heart, beating softly beneath every thought, every worry, every longing. We have been taught to search outside ourselves to seek approval, salvation, divinity in the stars and temples, in the distant eyes of others. But the great teachers, the mystics, the poets, the prophets, they all pointed to the same simple truth. The kingdom of heaven is within. The Tao flows through you. The I am that Moses encountered in the burning bush lives in the fire of your spirit. This truth is not a philosophy. It is a living presence, a vibration, a breath. It is in the way the sunlight moves through leaves. It is in the silence between your inhaling and your exhaling. It is in the moments when life takes your breath away and you can't explain why, only that something ancient inside you has been touched. The presence of God is not reserved for the holy or the devout. It does not discriminate between the monk in the mountain and the mother in the kitchen. It is not confined by robes or rituals or dogmas. It is available in this very breath, in this very second, to you, right where you are, just as you are. But to feel it, you must remember. Remember who you are beneath the roles, beneath the striving, beneath the masks you wear to survive in a world that has forgotten the sacred. You are not your name. You are not your story. You are not your failures or your triumphs. You are not the identity you've carefully constructed over years of seeking and comparing and performing. You are the silent awareness behind it all, the observer, the watcher, the stillness that has never been moved by the storms of life. And that stillness is God. To awaken to this presence is not to gain something new, but to peel away the layers that hid it. Like clouds moving from the face of the sun, your illusions part, and there it is, radiant, eternal, undeniable. The presence that never left, the source that never abandoned, the light that has never once stopped shining through you. It is not in some far-off place. It is not waiting for you to be better, purer, more spiritual. It is not hidden behind achievement or perfection. It is here, now, in your breath, in your being, in the quiet space between your thoughts. You do not need to earn it. You cannot impress it. You cannot bargain with it. You can only remember it. And in that remembrance, your life begins to transform, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. Because when you remember that God is within you, you stop searching, you stop grasping, you stop running, and you begin to live. You begin to move not from fear, but from love. Not from lack, but from fullness. Not from ego, but from essence. And the world around you begins to reflect that shift. Relationships soften, purpose emerges. The chaos does not disappear, but it no longer defines you. Because you are no longer rooted in the temporary, you are rooted in the eternal. This is the truth that sets you free. And freedom is not found in changing your life, it is found in changing your perception of it. In recognizing that every moment, every challenge, every joy, every loss is an invitation to go inward, to go deeper, to touch the divine that is already there. This is not theory, it is not wishful thinking. It is the ancient sacred truth whispered by the mystics of every tradition. Rumi spoke of it when he said, "Why are you so busy with this or that or good or bad? Pay attention to how things blend." Jesus spoke of it when he said, "The kingdom of God is within you." The Tao speaks of it without words, in the way water moves and trees grow and hearts break open. You are not separate. You never were. The illusion of separation is the root of all suffering. The belief that you are apart from God, that you are alone in the vastness, that you must prove your worth, is the lie the ego tells to keep you striving and seeking and never arriving. But the truth is, you have already arrived. You are already whole. You are already divine. And when you wake up to that truth, not intellectually, but experientially, your life begins to breathe differently. You walk differently. You speak differently. You listen more and speak less. You react less and respond more. You begin to see God not just in yourself, but in every face you meet, in the stranger, in the broken, in the annoying, in the beautiful, in the mirror. Because when you realize that God is within you, you also realize it is within everyone. And from that knowing, compassion flows. Not the kind of compassion that tries to fix or change, but the kind that simply allows, that sees the divine even in the mess, even in the pain, even in the one who has forgotten their own light. You become a sanctuary, a temple not built of stone but of stillness, a living, breathing reminder of what it means to be fully alive and deeply rooted in the sacred. And this world needs that. Not more noise, not more opinions, not more shouting about who's right and who's wrong. It needs presence. It needs remembrance. It needs you awake, whole, and aligned with the God within. So be still now. Let the world fall away for a moment. Let the striving cease. Let the mind be quiet. And feel that subtle hum of life that pulses through your chest. That is not just a heartbeat, that is a hymn. A sacred chant from the source of all things, echoing through the cathedral of your body. You are not here by accident. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are the temple and the flame. You are the wave and the ocean. You are the question and the answer. And the presence of God is not something to find, it is something to allow. So allow it. Let it move through you. Let it hold you. Let it speak through you, love through you, live through you. This is what you've been seeking, not a goal, not an outcome, but a return. A return to yourself. A return to now. A return to God. And in that return, there is nothing missing, nothing wrong, nothing to fix. There is only this. And this is holy. There is a sacred rhythm beneath all things, a pulse beneath the noise, beneath the schedules, beneath the ever-turning wheels of the world. And if you quiet yourself long enough, not to escape life, but to finally feel it, you will sense that rhythm in your chest like a memory you never quite forgot. It is not the rhythm of effort or striving or achievement, it is the rhythm of being, the cadence of I am. And this is the pulse of God within you, not a God who is watching from afar, judging from above, but a presence so intimate it breathes your every breath, so close it disappears into your sense of self. So eternal it waits, unmoved, while the tides of emotion rise and fall, while the ego builds its castles, while time spins its illusions. To live in awareness of this presence is to remember who you truly are, not in moments of spiritual peak, not in times of silence alone, but in every breath, every interaction, every step upon this earth. The true practice is not in retreating from life, but in living it fully, while never forgetting your source. It is easy to touch the divine on mountaintops or in candlelit rooms, but the mastery of the true awakening is found in remembering the presence of God while washing dishes, while navigating traffic, while listening deeply to someone in pain. It is in bringing the sacred into the mundane until there is no longer a separation, until every act becomes prayer, every glance becomes communion, every moment becomes holy ground. There is nothing you must do to become worthy of this presence. Worthiness is the ego's illusion. The soul knows no such thing. The soul does not measure or compare. The soul does not wait until you've achieved, until you've been forgiven, until you've proven yourself. The soul is, and that is enough. And when you remember this, not just with the mind, but with your being, the chains begin to fall away. The anxiety, the self-doubt, the need to control, they dissolve, not through effort, but through the soft light of truth. You are not here to earn love. You are here to realize you are made of it. God is not found in perfection. God is not hiding in your achievements. God does not need you to succeed to be near you. God is found in the broken places, in the trembling hands, in the silent cries of the night, in the moments when you forget how to be strong and simply fall into the arms of now. That is where the presence is most felt, not when you are pretending to be whole, but when you allow yourself to be seen as you are. For in the divine gaze there is no judgment, only recognition, only remembrance, only the quiet joy of a flame that has never stopped burning in you, patiently waiting for your return. The journey back is not long. It is not far. It is not even a journey in the way the world defines it. It is a shift, a softening, a letting go of everything that never belonged to you to begin with. The opinions, the roles, the expectations, the pain you carried that was never yours, the voices that said you must be more, do more, prove more. When you begin to release all that, what remains is God. What remains is the truth of who you are, unfiltered, radiant, unashamed. And that truth is never in conflict. It does not compete. It does not strive. It simply shines. You do not need to convince the world of your light. You need only to stop hiding it, not with force, not with noise, but with presence, real presence. The kind that does not flinch when the world shouts, the kind that does not bend when the winds of change blow, the kind that remains still like a mountain because it is rooted not in the temporary, but in the eternal. That is the presence of God in you. And it is not distant, it is not elusive. It is not waiting for you on some far-off day. It is here. Now, it is what is reading these words. It is what is feeling this moment. It is what is holding you even now, even if you feel unworthy of being held. You are not separate from the source. Separation is the great illusion. It is the veil that has been handed down through generations, this belief that you must find God, reach God, become worthy of God. But what if I told you you never left? What if I told you the distance you feel is only in your mind, not in your soul? What if I told you that every time you paused in awe, every time your breath caught a beauty, every time you were moved to tears by something you could not name, that was God? That was the presence reminding you. Not through thunder or lightning, but through the quiet knowing that says, I am here, I have always been here. And this presence does not need to be worshipped from afar. It needs to be lived through, expressed through. It longs not for your submission, but your participation. Not for your guilt, but your embodiment. You are not meant to kneel before life, but to rise into it, to become the vessel through which the divine sings, moves, dances, creates, heals. You are not just a seeker. You are the sought. You are not just a question. You are the answer waiting to be remembered. And this remembrance, this sacred returning, is not an event. It is a practice. A choice made again and again in the quiet spaces where the world has not yet spoken. So choose now, not to become anything new, but to return, to open, to listen, and in the listening to feel, and in the feeling to remember. Not the story, not the identity, not the fear, but the presence. The ever-unfolding, never-ending, always here presence of God within you, around you, as you, not as a metaphor, not as a concept, but as the deepest reality. The breath beneath your name, the light behind your eyes, the stillness in the center of your being. There will come a day when the old fears return not with violence, but with subtlety, like shadows stretching across a field at dusk. And you may question again, am I enough? Have I done enough? Will I ever find peace? But do not run. Do not rush to banish the doubt. Instead, allow it to speak. Listen not to believe it, but to understand that even your fear is a child of the divine, misunderstood and yearning for light. When you stop fighting your fear and begin to cradle it, you discover something holy hiding within the ache, the awareness that you are the one who watches. And the watcher is never afraid. The watcher has never been broken. The watcher is the silent one, the eternal one, the presence that holds space for the waves without drowning in them. And in that watching, a new power is born. Not the kind the world adores, not the kind that wins wars or dominates conversations, but a power so soft, so still, it cannot be shaken. The power to stay rooted when everything changes. The power to remain open when the heart breaks. The power to love not because of what is given in return, but because love is the nature of your being. You become a vessel through which the river flows, not stagnant, not seeking, just streaming in harmony with something greater than the mind can name. This is where life becomes less about effort and more about alignment. Not a path you carve with tools of control, but a path you allow by surrendering the illusion that you must walk alone. Surrender is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. To surrender is not to give up, it is to give in. To fall gently into the arms of the infinite and say, I trust you, even here, even now. The tree does not struggle to grow. It simply yields to the Sunday. The waves do not resist the shore. They simply arrive and return. There is no need to force what flows by nature. There is no need to push when you can trust the pulse that brought you into being. That same intelligence that formed galaxies and painted sunsets is breathing you now. And it has not abandoned its masterpiece. It has not forgotten its own design. To live from this space is to become a living invitation for yourself, for others to step into truth, to rest in what is real. You no longer chase answers like birds scattered by the wind. You realize that all true answers are silent. They do not shout from mountaintops. They whisper from within. And so you turn inward, not because the world has failed you, but because the world was never meant to complete you. It was only meant to reflect you. And now you see that what you search for in others was a glimpse of what had been quietly glowing in your own chest all along. Your essence needs no permission to shine. The light you carry is not dependent on validation or applause. It was placed there by something ancient, something holy, long before you learned to call yourself by name. And that light does not diminish with age. It does not fade with failure. It is not measured in moments of greatness. It is eternal because it is truth. And truth does not compete. It does not beg. It simply is. The moment you stop trying to become what you already are, you allow that truth to rise. Not like a performance, but like a sunrise, effortless, inevitable, and full of grace. And as it rises, it reveals something even more tender. The realization that all along, life has been for you. Even the pain, even the detours, even the silence you mistook for abandonment. Everything in its strange perfection has been leading you not to something new, but back to yourself. Not to more answers, but to deeper presence. Not to a destination, but to a remembering that you are not a mistake. You are not behind. You are not in need of fixing. You are the one the journey was designed to awaken. You are the spark in the center of the flame. You are the breath behind the prayer. You are the presence of God made manifest in human form. There comes a moment when you realize that all you're seeking has been a kind of circling, not a mistake, but a spiral, a sacred, winding inward. At first, you search for meaning in the faces of others, in the accolades, in the mirror of the world's approval. But now, like a tide returning home, you begin to sense that what you've been searching for is not something to be found, but something to be remembered. It is not out there. It never has been. It is the quiet depth beneath your thoughts, the still space behind your words, the untouched silence behind every story you've ever told yourself. That silence is the presence of God. And it has been with you from the first breath and will remain with you long after the final one. You are not alone. You never have been. The aloneness you feel is not an absence, but a sacred invitation to come closer to yourself, to sit in the holy fire of your own presence without running, without fixing, without numbing. This is the courage the world seldom teaches, the courage to be with yourself, fully, tenderly, without masks. To let the ache be heard, to let the fear be held, to let the grief become a gateway, not to despair, but to depth. Because when you allow yourself to feel it all, without resistance, without judgment, you discover that even your pain has been a carrier of light. A divine messenger, not to destroy you, but to crack the shell that kept you from the truth of your infinite nature. The ego fears this kind of surrender. It will tell you that to stop striving is to lose, that to be soft is to be weak, that to rest is to fall behind. But the soul knows better. The soul remembers a different way. It knows that there is great power in stillness, that creation itself began not with motion but with silence, that flowers do not bloom by effort but by alignment, and that your purpose, your path, your peace, these are not things you must chase. They are rivers that flow to you when you stop building dams of doubt and begin trusting the current of your own divine design. You are not broken. You are becoming. You are not lost. You are being called inward. There is a sacred unfolding that happens when you no longer rush to fix what feels uncomfortable, but instead choose to be with it, breathe with it, hold space for it, and in that space something miraculous begins to emerge. A softness, a compassion, a clarity that cannot be taught, only remembered. You begin to see with the eyes of the heart, and in doing so, you recognize the sacred in places you once overlooked. In the eyes of a stranger, in the crack of your own voice, in the way sunlight touches your skin. God reveals himself not just in temples, but in traffic, in laughter, in tears, in the holy mess of ordinary life. And suddenly, nothing needs to change for everything to be different. You find yourself walking through the same world, but with new eyes. The leaves are no longer just leaves. They are scriptures written in green. The breeze is no longer random. It is a kiss from the formless. The silence between your thoughts becomes a sanctuary. The presence you once searched for in churches or texts or philosophies now lives in your heartbeat, your breath, your awareness. You no longer pray to reach something beyond you. Pray by becoming what you already are. A living prayer, a moving meditation, a temple of light wrapped in skin. To awaken to this truth is not to escape the human experience. It is to infuse it with meaning so deep that even suffering becomes sacred. You no longer run from your wounds, you witness them. You no longer carry shame, you transmute it. You no longer fear the darkness, you meet it with the knowing that light has always been your essence. This is not the journey of self-improvement. This is the path of self-remembrance. Not trying to fix what was never broken, but removing the layers that hid the light. You are not here to perform divinity, you are here to embody it. And in this embodiment, you become a quiet revolution. Not through noise, not through force, but through presence. People feel it before you speak. They feel something ancient in your stillness, something sacred in your presence. You do not need to explain it. You do not need to prove it. You simply are. And that being is the medicine this world has forgotten. A reminder that peace is not a destination, it is a frequency. A state of being that arises when you are fully here, fully now, fully aligned with the knowing that God is not watching you. God is being you. And as you allow this presence to saturate your being, a soft unraveling begins, not a destruction, but a shedding. The identities you wore so tightly, the roles you played to feel safe, the masks that smiled when your heart ached, they begin to fall away, not with effort, but with grace. You do not mourn their loss, you bless their purpose. They protected you when you forgot the eternal truth, but you no longer need to be protected from yourself. You are safe in your own presence. You are whole in your own gaze. And what remains when the outer layers dissolve is not emptiness, it is spaciousness. Room for the divine to stretch its arms through you. Room for peace to breathe. Room for the real you to rise, not the constructed self, but the eternal one. In this sacred space, you realize that you were never the one who needed healing. You are the healer. Not because you fix others, but because your presence itself becomes a balm. You walk into rooms and hearts quiet, not because of charisma, but because you carry something real, something ancient, something that says, you are safe here, you are loved here, you are seen here. You begin to live not from performance, but from alignment. You no longer speak to be heard, you speak because truth moves through you. You no longer act to be valued, you act because love flows through you. You are no longer trying to convince the world of your light, you have become the light. And this light does not demand perfection. It does not shrink when you falter. It does not abandon you in your moments of doubt. It remains steady, quiet, unmoved. The presence of God in you does not rise and fall with your moods or your circumstances. It is not affected by your temporary beliefs. It is not offended by your fears. It is the constant, the eternal, the witness behind it all. And the more you return to it, the more you come to see that life was never about controlling the waves. It was about remembering that you are the ocean. The world will continue to spin. There will be moments of sorrow, of loss, of uncertainty, but you will not be moved in the same way, because something inside you has rooted itself in truth. And from that root, a different kind of life grows. Not faster, not louder, not more successful in the way society measures success, but fuller, richer, more awake. You begin to feel things more deeply, not because you are fragile, but because your armor is gone. You begin to weep, not from weakness, but from reverence. You begin to laugh from the belly, to listen from the heart, to move through the world as if every moment matters, because it does. Each breath becomes sacred, not because it is rare, but because you are finally paying attention. You are no longer sleepwalking through your life. You are awake. And in this awakened state, you discover the quiet joy of being present. Not always happy, not always certain, but always here, and here is enough. You do not need to be somewhere else, someone else, something more. The divine is not in some distant destiny, it is in your willingness to be here now, to touch the ground with your bare feet and whisper, this moment is holy, this breath is enough, this heart is full of God. And so your life becomes less about chasing and more about allowing, less about performing and more about expressing. You do not strive for worth, you live from it. You do not barter for love, you embody it. You do not wait for peace, you become the space in which peace arises. And slowly, the grip loosens. The clenched jaw relaxes. The tight chest softens. You are no longer bracing against life. You are flowing with it. Trusting the intelligence that orchestrates the stars to guide your every step, not with loud commands, but with soft nudges, with intuitive whispers, with the sacred rhythm of your own breath. And now we arrive not at an ending, but at a threshold. The path does not close, it deepens. It folds inward, not to imprison, but to liberate. And in this final unfolding, the truth that has been echoing through every breath, every still moment, every whispered remembrance comes fully alive. The presence of God is not just within you, it is you. Not as metaphor, but as reality. Not as a distant echo, but as the very essence of your being. You are not merely carrying the light, you are made of it. All your longing, all your searching, all your reaching, it was never in vain. It was the soul stretching its arms through the fabric of illusion, yearning not for something outside, but to return to what has always been true. Every ache was a doorway, every tear was a cleansing. Every doubt was a question that pointed you back inward. Even your resistance, even your forgetting, even your fear, they were never signs of failure. They were part of the dance, part of the choreography of awakening. You were never off track. You were never outside the divine embrace. Not for one breath, not for 1 second. And now you know, not in theory, not in words, but in your bones, in your silence, in the deep well of your knowing, that there is nothing to become, nothing to earn, nothing to fix. You were never broken. You were always holy. This is the liberation the soul came to remember, that love is not a goal, it is your identity, that peace is not a prize, it is your foundation, that God is not a judge in the sky, but the beloved within the breath, the presence, the still awareness that watches, loves, and gently guides. You may still walk through storms. You may still stumble and forget, but you will never again be fully lost, because once the truth is known, it cannot be unknown. Once the flame is felt, even the darkest night cannot extinguish it. You will carry this presence into every moment, into the grocery line, into the hard conversations, into the quiet mornings and the restless nights. You will be the space that reminds others of their own holiness, not by preaching, but by being, not by fixing, but by seeing. And in your presence, they too will begin to remember. And this perhaps is the most sacred gift of all, that your own return to truth becomes a mirror for others to find their way home. There is no applause, no dramatic crescendo, just a breath, and then another, and in that breath, a deep and eternal knowing. I am here. I am whole. I am held. I am the presence I once sought. I am the love I once chased. I am the light I once feared I'd lost. And in this knowing, the final wall dissolves, the last illusion fades, and what remains is simple and eternal and free. You are not here to become divine. You are here to remember that you always have been. And now, beloved soul, you remember, you remember, you remember.